for example, this one, yeah, if you can see here, this is a consensus statement, and it doesn't have anything significant in terms of the z-score. So this means that basically all the groups agree with, we need to have open areas where only local fishers are allowed to fish. So all of them agree. Yeah, so you can go on and flag what distinguishes all the other. For example, there is this statement which distinguishes two groups in particular, the 1 and 3. Both disagreeing with that only the government policies will encourage fishers to change their catch. So both groups disagree. So basically what happens is that once you are able to flag all the statements, right? I am going to filter it. I'm going to do this. Now, if I filter for distinguishes, for example, only number 2, right? So I can see that the group number 2 is this. So they basically, these are the statements characterizing their point of view or their way of thinking, right? So they quite strongly agree compared to the other that fish farming could contribute to the repopulation of overexploited species, and that there is an evidence that fishing and conservation goals may be reconciled by better aligning catch with species and size-based production rates. So this is someone from the Pyramids of Life, probably. But they really disagree, for example, that fishers should be able to land what they catch. And these groups also really disagrees about fish farms and industrial fishing are taken away from small-scale fishers. And if I go back into my other file, I can have a look at who this group are actually. So I can basically filter again and sort group 2 by the largest. And you can see that these 5 guys here who have the highest loading on the group 2 are our 5 people thinking that way. So in our case are a university students, a public government researcher, and so on. So of course here you don't have much information about the respondents, but if you add more information in your survey, you could really kind of, characterize who the group is. For example, this is all fishers or this is part fishers. Yeah, there are 2 outputs mainly from all this exercise. One output is the first thing, so grouping people. And the second one is grouping statement within the groups that you created in the first step. So to understand what the people you grouped, how they think. This is the first step. So here we are grouping people, right? So these are the loadings on these factors, which are the clusters of people, groups. And in this case, the higher is the loading, the more likely that the respondents belongs to a group. In this case, for example, these first 5 people are more likely to be correlated with this point of view, which is number 2 point of view, right? Now, this is just factor 2, right? But if I go back, into the result, and I am here looking at the statement now, right? So now that I know the groups, I am looking not only at group 2. But what exactly does group 2 think, right? How do they see the issue about sustainability of fisheries in the UK? Well, if I look at the standardized score now of the statements, and I am just taking those that distinguish the factor 2 or the group 2, okay? I am looking at here and saying that this group of 5 respondents really agree with fish farm could contribute to the repopulation, and that there is evidence that aligning species with size-based production rates can reconcile fishing and conservation, but they really disagree about that fishers should land what they catch and that industrial farming is bad. So now, of course, I mean, my group 2 is called factor 2, but I can start like interpreting that, and maybe these 5 people in my cluster are, I don't know, pyramids of life oriented respondents. So I can start giving name to the groups, right? So yeah, these guys, for example, are not against industrial farming, or you know what I mean, are science lead respondents group, whatever. This is a matter of interpretation. For example, the group number 3 has 2 statements which are really, you know, characterizing. Of course, in this case, we are kind of simplifying because we are only looking at those really characterizing the group, but we could look at roughly the whole kind of, you know. And in this case, for example, group number 3, which is done by, let's see. Yes, which is basically done by these 3 guys here. Yes, these are all working in uni. Research associate, professor, researcher, and lecturer, and the lecturer. So these 3 respondents here are likely to see the issue in the same way, right? So once we know this, so how exactly do they think? Well, this group, for example, really agree that there is a lack of trust between fishers and scientists, and that there should be stricter regulation. They disagree, though, you see? So, I mean, we can, for example, call this group as the one more, I mean, laissez-faire group, more, I don't know, they probably believe more in not in regulation, but more into, you know, interpersonal trust. So a more informal let's call them informal governance group. So, you know, I am just interpreting the data as they come. Now, as I said, you could expand and see what other statements are or not characterizing this group, and you might get more sophisticated type of interpretation.